So, today's talk is called Peter Got Out of the Boat. Now, there's a story. Here, I'll read it to you. You probably already all know it. I know how you guys like to read your Bible. Comes from Matthew 14. It says, "Then he made the disciples get into the boat." This is after they fed a lot of people. "And go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was many furlongs distant from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night he came to them, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him on the sea, they were terrified, saying, 'It's a ghost.' And they cried out for fear. But immediately he spoke to them, saying, 'Take heart, it is I, have no fear.' And Peter answered him, 'Lord, if it is you, bid me come to you on the water.' And he said, 'Come.' So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, 'Lord, save me.' Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, 'O man of little faith, why did you doubt?' And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And those in the boat worshipped him, saying, 'Truly, you are the Son of God.'" Now, the point of this is not in the worship of Jesus. I don't teach that, ever. Peter had the faith to get out of the boat. The other disciples didn't get out of the boat. Peter got out of the boat because he believed it was possible. He believed that if he looked at, and we're going to use the word Christ instead of Jesus, because it's about a consciousness. He believed that if he kept his eye on the Christ consciousness, he could do the impossible. And then the wind came along and distracted him. Or the world came along and distracted him, and suddenly he doubted. And he began to sink. And as soon as he put his eye back on the Christ, it lifted him up. And he didn't sink. We all come here, I believe this. Well, I don't know if you three, I don't. We all come here to to reaffirm our faith in God. Did you guys come here today for that? To reaffirm your faith in God? How about you guys over there? Did you come here today to reaffirm your faith in God? How about the rest of you? How about you guys? Did you all come here today to reaffirm your faith in God?
Yep. Yes.
How about you, Paul? You guys, did you come here today to reaffirm your faith in God? Gigi and Brian, did you come here today? Steve? Okay, just making sure. I came here today to reaffirm my faith in God. God the good, God the possible. Not the God, the idol to be worshipped. I didn't come here today to reaffirm my faith in that. I can do that anywhere, and I'll be wrong every time. I came here because I want to get out of the boat and try the impossible. I know a lot of you here, I've witnessed the impossible that a lot of you have gotten out of the boat for. But we don't get out of the boat just once. We get out of the boat a lot to keep trying the impossible. Because if we only do it once, then we start to believe it's impossible. It must have been a fluke. Must have been an accident. And I told you about walking on fire a few weeks ago. I didn't get out of a boat to walk on fire, but I did walk on rough grass in my bare feet. And that was a challenge. But I walked on fire. Not once, but twice. Because I had to do it the second time to make sure the first time wasn't just a fluke. But I also looked, we call it, upward. Not to the sky, but to my highest consciousness. And I asked both times, because my teacher told me to, Both times. Can I walk on fire and not get burned? And both times I heard yes. So I walked on fire and into the arms of two loving beings who then set my feet in a pail of water, as they did for everyone in that circle. Peter got out of the boat. Isn't it scary to get out of the boat sometimes? It's a horrifying thought. I will sink if I get out of that boat and I'm not who I thought I was. Because getting out of the boat relinquishes who you thought you were, or who you are currently thinking you am while you're in the boat. If I am, yes, a beloved child of God, but subject to the earth and the body, I'm not getting out of that boat. There is no way I'm going to try that. And I'll be honest with you, I told you a few weeks ago when I came back from Alabama, I stood on the edge of the fire. I had my teacher's hand for a moment. And then I thought, I can't do it. I could get hurt. I could burn myself on this fire. Imagine that thought. Even I had just seen a bunch of people walking across the fire. And I thought, I can't do it. And then I looked at my teacher and she said, you can do it. And I walked right across. The second time I took her hand, but I didn't have to look to her for permission. I'd heard the voice clearly in my mind. Yes, you can walk on fire and not get burned. I'm not special because I walked on fire and didn't get burned. 43 of us did it. Yes, we were all ministers. Being a minister clearly does not make one special if you have read the news ever. Many ministers falter. I like telling a good story. And I tell true stories. I never tell anything about myself that's not true up here. I don't make anything up to make it sound better. I just want to keep getting out of the boat. I wanted to be on the stage for many years. I really wanted to be on the stage since I was a child. And my mother was a dancer, and I was so afraid. My mother would take that boat up to an audition, and I would step out, and then I would hide. I would try to sing, but I couldn't really because I was afraid. I was so afraid of not being good enough that I was afraid to show forth that I am good enough. And then so I didn't do that. And then I had a choice between wrestling and tap dancing, and I picked wrestling. How about that? And while most of the kids were inside practicing wrestling, I was playing tag out in the front lobby with a few of the other kids who really weren't into wrestling. And then I lost my first match because I didn't know how to wrestle. And I didn't have to do that anymore, so I got to retreat even more. Nobody forced me into anything. They badgered me, but they didn't force me into it. Wanted me to play an instrument. And I thought, well, if I'm going to play, I want to do the bassoon. That's what I picked up, this giant thing. Nobody was going to get me a bassoon, so I didn't have to learn a musical instrument. And I hid. And then I snuck into show business by doing lights and sound for 21 years. And it wasn't until I began a healing journey that I started getting in front of people and talking. And I liked it. I liked it a lot, but only because I was authentic. When I got in front of people and told my story, it was authentic because it was a true story. It was a true story about myself and my journey and the way I perceived it. And I perceived it with gratitude as opposed to rage. And that's what led me to ministry. And I came into Unity, and man, I met great ministers. Eric Butterworth, fantastic. He was an icon in the Unity movement. And even the minister I had at first, name was Paul, he was very funny. And then I met Edwin. And oh my goodness, Edwin Gaines. Just amazing. Funny, but kept reminding me of the truth of who I am. The good that I am. Over and over again, and gave me the tools to do it. And I've said this here before, but I'd like to remind everyone. I said to myself, well, I can't be Eric Butterworth. I can't be Paul. I can't be Edwin Gaines. And I heard the voice that said, we already have one of each of them. We need a Shawn. And I thought, well, I can do that. I can be a Shawn. So I had to learn how to be the best Shawn that I could be. And it was okay. So I just kept, I taught, I remember my first class I taught, and it was thanks to the late Ruth Warwick, because she was 55 minutes late for a 1-hour class. And she was supposed to teach it that day to fill in for the minister. So I taught the class. Spontaneously, I taught a 12-hour class. And he let me be a teacher after that. I started doing a meditation. The first week I wrote it and read the whole thing. And then I put my co-facilitator the next week, she did it, and she didn't read anything. And I thought, well, I guess then I can let it come through me. And that's how I developed my 12-power meditation. It's because I wanted to. And I kept taking class after class after class. And I learned how to practice this message more and more. Because there's no point in me getting up here and talking about this stuff if I can't tell you my own experience on how I used it to overcome limited thinking. And that's what it always comes down to, limited thinking. It means I have a limited thought about my possibility, or the possibility of God, however you want to put it. You know, oh, sure, God can do it for everybody else, but not me. Baloney. That's not possible. What I began to look at is people I saw manifesting. People, they did this. And I thought, well, if they can do it, then I can do it. And so I got more and more comfortable. I used to read I write a talk every week. And on Saturday afternoon, David would listen to it like he was directing a show. And he would have a tablet, and I would stand at his piano in New York, and I would read my talk. And he would give me notes. Well, this makes sense here. This really doesn't make sense here. And then one week he was away. Well, I had to get up here at Unity Center in Norwalk and do my talk without having rehearsed it with David. Well, there was no problems with it. So I didn't use him anymore for that. And then I saw all these people doing talks without a script. And I wanted that because I thought it would be so much easier each week to not have to write. Now, I don't criticize those who do it because a lot of people do it well. I think I did it well when I wrote scripts. But I didn't want that. And then we were in Florida, and we were speaking in Clearwater. We had a brand new apartment then. And I had these alarm clocks that were just lovely. And I remember I woke up at 5 till 6 to get up and write my talk. I was at that point where I wrote on Sunday morning. And I closed my eyes for a second. And David said, what time is it? And it was still 5 till 6 on that brand new clock. It was actually about 8:15. And we were supposed to be there by 8:30, and it was a 25-minute drive. And so I didn't get to write a talk for that week. Well, I found out, I could do a talk without writing it. And then finally I was speaking at Unity of New York, which is a nice big stage at Symphony Space, and I thought, I'm not going to be bound by a lectern and a script, and I'm not writing a talk. And I've never written a talk since. I have my readings. But my point is I kept getting out of the boat. The very first time I was a platform assistant, Unity of New York, it was our second week we were open. And I was the platform. And I was sure that everyone was there to judge me as I led a prayer. And I did the offering. And it was like spelling Mississippi. didn't have, God, was it the light of God surrounds us? Yeah, it was not the offer, prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us, love of God enfolds us, power of God protects us. I get MIS, double SI, SSI, PPI. I thought. So the next week I had notes for other things, and then I decided, you know what? It's Unity. They're here to love me. And I got rid of my notes and took a chance. Stepped out of the boat. Stepped out of the boat, and you've all watched my process. I've stepped out of a lot of boats. I watched a lot of you step out of a lot of boats. And then step back in. And sometimes I step back in the boat. It's too scary sometimes, I think, to ask for what I want. How ridiculous. I've gotten more stuff in my life because I asked. Sometimes people say no. But that doesn't mean I can't have it. It just means they're not going to be the one to give it to me. And some people have said no and then rethought it. That's often the case with me. I try not to say no anymore, but a lot of times people come to me, and I will somehow say no, and then I go away and think about it, and then come back and say, you know what, here's how I can see this, so let's go. No doesn't always mean you can't have it. It rarely means you can't have it. What is it, Est, that used to do a thing? Go away today, come back tomorrow with $10,000. Ask till somebody gives you $10,000. Overnight. And David said there were people who came back having been given $10,000. Others, they did not get $10,000, but they asked. They practiced asking. You got to ask the world for what you want. And it's not, oh, please, world, give it to me, as if you're at the mercy of the world. The world is ours. It's mine. It's yours. This is mine. And this is, you guys are how I see you. You're not how you are. You're how I see you. Are we clear on the difference? You are, trust me, you will never be how you are to me. You will always be how I perceive you. And I will never be how I am to you. It will always be how you perceive me. It's just the way that it is. But we can still get out of the boat and see where we connect energetically. How we connect in love, how we connect in truth, how we connect in joy, how we connect through our Christ mind. I like the word Christ. Growing up, I had no use for it. It confused me because I thought it was a person, first of all, and not a consciousness. And so in unity, I learned the difference. And I grew to become a fan of Jesus in unity. In the Christian churches I went to, I had no use for Jesus. Again, it was used as a threat, not as an opportunity for love, not as an opportunity for connection, or as an example of somebody who really practiced what he preached. He stepped out of the boat. And then he asked the people with him to get out of the boat. Now, here's the thing, though. We don't want to be Peter. We want to be Jesus. Peter is one of 12. One of 12 of our divine mind faculties. Peter represents faith. But faith is wishy-washy. Fear is not the opposite of faith. It's just faith in what I'm afraid of. But there's 12 divine mind faculties with the Christ being at the crown. We want to align all of our faculties, and I'm not going into all of those today. There are lots of books about them. We've talked about them here before. And they're Google. Google is your friend. And so, but faith is our yes power. What are you saying yes to? And that's how you'll know where your faith is sitting currently. Don't pray for more faith. Ask yourself to shift your faith if it's not in what you want it to be. Is your faith in staying in the boat because you're afraid, or is it getting out of the boat because it's possible? Because it's possible. I'm going to read something else. It's the Revealing Words definition of Christ. Christ, the incarnating principle of the God-man, the perfect word or idea of God, which unfolds into the true man and is blessed with eternal life by measuring up to the divine standard, thus fulfilling the law of righteousness. Christ is the divine man. Jesus is the name that represents an individual expression of the Christ idea. Christ existed long before Jesus. It was the Christ mind in Jesus that exclaimed, "And now, God, glorify thou me with thine own self, with the glory which I had with thee before the world was." Christ abides in each person as his potential perfection. Jesus Christ, the embodiment of all divine ideas, exists eternally in the mind of being as the only begotten Son of Man, or Son of God, or the Anointed One, and is the living principle working in man. So here's the deal. You do not have to be religious for the Christ to be awakened in you. You just have to claim it. So rather than claiming, I am stuck, claim that Christ in me is awake now, and then see what shifts. Rather than saying, there is no time, say, the Christ in me sees time correctly for what it is. Rather than claiming anything about you that is less than God-like. Claim the Christ in me is awake now. And then see. It's not that Jesus is awake in me now. It's that the Christ in me, the anointed mind, is awake in me. And then see what happens. Practice and observe the results. Practice, observe the results. Practice, observe the results. Anyone can whistle. Not always easy. But anyone can. Some of us can with a mouthful of crackers. Get out of the boat. Thank you.